Hello, everybody. This is Paul Herman, the Prince of Motivation and also host of Zaka Presents My Journey. We're creating this vulnerable and positive platform where you get inspired and motivated from different leaders from our community. Today's guest is Soni. Welcome to the show, Sana.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you for having me. It's very exciting.
Yes, no. I'm excited, and I know the listeners are going to be very excited to kind of hear the story and hear so much about you and just traveling and what you're doing now. I know before I even get into like the nitty gritty of it all, I really want to just kind of get into this right here because I was very fascinated by your bio. I've known that you have traveled and lived in different countries, in your time before you actually settled in DC. Could you just kind of explain some of those countries where you lived and along that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I was born in India, and my father saw an opportunity when I was about 3 years old in Hungary. So we moved out there, very few Indians out there, and we continued with being very Indian out there, also assimilating a little bit, found a community, lived there for 15, 16 years, became citizens, most importantly, became European Union citizens. Um, and then I went to UCLA in California and came back to Europe about 10 years ago to be able to work without visa problems, and lived in London for 9 years. So then that's where I met my partner, and we have now moved to DC for his job.
Oh, wow, wow. Out of all the places that you lived in, could you tell me a place that is the most memorable?
Only from a historical perspective, I have to talk about Hungary because it was the 90s. They're coming out of the fall of the Soviet Union. It was just a strange time to be an immigrant there. I was looked at funny quite a bit. Thankfully, never experienced too much discrimination that I know of, but definitely the funniest was when someone asked us if we were Chinese. Just to
Wow.
get an idea of how closed off the society had been. So the further I get away from it time wise, the more I learn about what an interesting situation it was for us to be living there.
And when you were growing up in these other, were traveling to these different places and countries, did you feel like you guys fit in? Was there a community, an Indian community that you guys were affiliated with? I know that when you obviously arrive in a country, one of the things that you're always looking for is possibly who speaks like you, who looks like you. Was it very hard to find that when you were traveling?
I have to say, unfortunately, I don't remember because I was so small. I don't remember how my parents met these Indian folks, but there were very, very few of them. And for years later on, if anyone said, "I know an Indian family in Hungary," it would turn out that we knew them too, because there are just such few of us. But it was a strong community. We would see each other every weekend. We'd go to Vienna for the nearest Indian uh, grocery store. We didn't have one in Budapest. We do now, run by my old best friend's mom. But we back then didn't. And we used to have our own Diwali parties and our own Indian Independence Day celebration. And we kept it going and shared a lot of VHSs of Bollywood movies.
Yes, you got to go back to the VHS. That was a good time right there. Pop that right into your VCR and you were ready to go.
Oh,
Um, Now, when it comes down to those days, obviously your parents have influenced you and inspired you during that time. Is there something you've taken away from your parents during that time? Obviously it was very hard growing up, being the of that only Indian culture, and trying to find individuals that were in that community so they could kind of expose you to that as well too. Is there anything you take away from your parents? Any values that you've taken away from them?
Oh, yes. I mean, I have to say, like so many other immigrants whose parents were the first generation, you really just learn so much about the value of sacrifice. You can see it, and of course you can see it even more looking back when you're older. How much they sacrificed, how hard it was for them to have to learn this very strange language. It is really one of the hardest languages out there, and how how hard they worked to make sure that my sister and I had a good life, and how much we owe them for that. And there's a huge difference in the way I live thanks to what they did for us. So I'm taking from them the values of hard work and discipline, that I hope to keep applying to my life.
So now you have spoken to us about your family members. Now let's talk a little bit more about you actually going away to school. Now, why did you choose UCLA?
I chose it because I wanted to be in film. I wanted to do Hollywood, and I'm very lucky that I was able to do that all the way from Hungary. I went right over. It was between USC and UCLA, but I'm really glad I made that decision to go to UCLA. And had the best time. It really was just like in the movies that I'd seen. I didn't have much experience with America, but I'd seen so much of it in movies and TV.
And did you do your undergrad? Did you do a grad program there as well?
I did an undergrad and then I did a certificate program, which
Mhm.
was evenings and weekends.
Okay. Okay. Now, how was that program for you? What did you feel like you were the only minority within that program? Like, how did it look like in those classrooms for you?
It was thankfully very nice and mixed, which I was not used to coming from Eastern Europe. UCLA has a lot of Asians, and we had maybe not a huge variety in the different people and their heritage, but we had lots of Asian and Hispanic kids. So basic and some Indian kids off, from my memory. So that's kind of how it was for me. So I always felt very comfortable being around lots of diversity, and I was
Mhm.
happy to have that. And it's so good that a lot of those classmates that I came up with, it's so great to see them succeeding now.
Mhm. Now, you mentioned a key word, diversity. What does diversity mean to you, and how has it impacted your life in your career?
Um, Obviously, it means equal representation to me. I'm still working it out within myself. Um, whether that should mean, quite literally, if you want to think about it in numbers, should it mean, let's say, if you have a film, that the cast should be 100% representative of the community in which it was made? Should it reflect the viewership of a different community? How much of that, diversity that you see in the community or the country, how much of that should be reflected in the crew? That all is something I'm personally working out in my mind in terms of what I think is fair. I don't know if I've really arrived at a conclusion. And I'm sorry, I don't remember your other question.
No, and how has diversity, like, how have you seen diversity within the field that you're in right now? Obviously, like you said, when you were in school, you were very blessed to be in a very diverse setting. Do you feel like the industry that you're in right now, especially being out in Hollywood, do you feel like it's very diverse? Do you see a lot of individuals that look like you as well within your culture? I know you mentioned that there was a small group of Indian community at UCLA while you were going to school. Did you How do you feel about it currently right now in diversity?
So I never connected too much with the Indian community out there for some reason, or at least the kids at school there. I just couldn't. Generally, our values didn't match up. So instead, I sought out the Hungarian group, which was so tiny, and our values matched up a little bit more there. But in terms of work out in the UK, when I was working for so long, it was mostly white English people and lots of Europeans and Eastern Europeans, like Polish people, and a little less diversity. And this is something that the UK is tackling quite head on, and I'm very happy about that, with tons of initiatives and schemes from private and government organizations to even out these numbers and to be more representative of what the population of the UK looks like. And I'm very, very happy to see that. Here, in my job currently in the US, I'm very happy to say that we have such a diverse mix of people at the company. And it's so wonderful to log on and look at our company meetings and our big Zoom meetings where we see a variety of colors and different kinds of people. It makes me so happy. And I feel more comfortable and more at home that way.
Well, you've been around the world, so you've been exposed to a lot of cultures, and definitely the word diversity has traveled with you in the many countries that you have visited. Now, could you explain a little bit more about your position and what you do at your company? I'm very intrigued to know, and I know the listeners as well too. If you kind of break down a little bit more about what you actually do at your company.
Yes, I really really enjoy it. It's what I do is maybe not too glamorous, but in the day to day, but it's the best place to be to highlight and to get films out there that are made by independent filmmakers, sometimes in lower budgets, because these are the films that rarely get seen and rarely get marketed. You mostly know about the big studio blockbusters. So to be helping out and bringing money to both us and the independent filmmakers is a blessing. That's
Mhm.
what we do in a nutshell. But my job is in sales. I take our giant catalog of movies and send them to ad supported platforms that you might find on your phone, your smart TV, or on your web browser.
Mm. Wow, wow, wow. Okay. So you get to see the movies before they even come out.
Yeah, yeah, when I have time. That's one of my favorite things. That's kind of why I got into movies and working in movies. I love being able to see things before they come out because out in Eastern Europe, we had to wait 6 months sometimes. That would infuriate me as a kid.
And I was just about to ask you that question because I know when I was traveling myself, I used to be like, "Oh, look, Rush Hour's out," and it was like 2 years later. I'm like, "Why are they playing? What's going on with Rush Hour? Why is Rush Hour playing?" They're like, "It just came out." Being in different communities in different countries, you get to see how like sometimes the lag to get things from one place to another. So now you're in an actual environment and industry where you actually get to see the stuff firsthand and before it actually comes out to the public. So that's a really good thing. Now, being a woman in your field and having this leadership role, obviously you have to have thick skin. You have to obviously give a lot of direction. Could you explain to the listeners a moment in time where your leadership where you had to kind of step into it a little bit more, your role, and how'd you go about it?
There have been many times, I can't think of any specific time, but there have been many times where I may have been in a boardroom or meeting with only men, and there's a minute, a moment where it kind of pops into your head, oh, this is happening. And there's a moment of pride, but I try to put that aside and try to treat it as normally as possible and try to just um, act like, and not act like, but become just another person. And generally that works, especially when it's a busy meeting, we have a lot to discuss. And I'm not sure that's the right attitude. Maybe it's something I should focus on and think about and realize that this is good. This is a wonderful thing. I am the only woman here, or I'm the youngest here. And I'm very proud of that fact. I'm proud of that, that I've achieved it for myself, but I'm also proud that it is possible today. So that has happened quite a bit. And I'm looking forward to it hopefully not happening much more. As time has gone on, I have seen more and more women in these meetings, and that makes me very, very happy.
Well, you obviously are one of the first within your community, or maybe within your company, where you are actually in that environment and you're in those meetings. I know at times you're probably since you just like you just mentioned, you don't even notice it because you're just so openly like inviting to everyone. But obviously, that is the harsh reality that's out there. There's not enough, sometimes a certain demographic or individual, whether it be male or female, in that room, in those rooms or in those meetings. So you to be there, I know obviously you're going to inspire a lot of the listeners to kind of step up into those leadership positions. And I know it's very hard, because depending on the situation, the amount of things that you have to go to get there. But the things that you've learned and picked up from your parents, that about that how they fought hard and struggled through certain things, it obviously has been embedded in you, and as you can see, it's actually working within your career. So kudos to your family members for, you know,
Mhm.
dropping them gems off early in the game with you.
I will say there are moments of underconfidence and insecurity, which used to happen a lot more. And with time, with more work, the more experience, that tends to fall away. But it still comes back here and there. And I just have to remind myself that everyone feels this. Even men who are much older will be feeling this, and that many of them have just learned to kind of suppress it. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, you really just do have to suppress it, especially when you have a
True.
lot of work to do and
Yeah.
you have goals and targets for yourself and for your company. And I have really liked that process. I have liked looking back and saying, oh, even 4 years ago, 3 years ago, I wasn't as confident. I would have been afraid to speak up. I wish I'd spoken up more. I was right.
Mhm.
Or I thought of that a while ago. I should have said something. Um, and so it's totally a journey.
Well, you definitely are speaking it out loud now. So kudos to you and congratulations on that. Because obviously stepping up, sometimes people get complacent, especially if they feel like they don't relate or they don't connect with their community and they just kind of stay where they are. But you've kind of inclined up that ladder and you're still going to be doing that in many years to come. Now we're talking about, the industry and about immigrants and stuff. How do you see immigrants within the industry that you're in right now? Like, how do you see them behind the camera or even in front of the camera? How is that when you look at it?
It has definitely increased, and I'm very, very happy that there are very strong initiatives across many organizations and companies to be more representative of the country and what it looks like, and to show them both in front of the camera and to hire them behind the camera. It shows that people are trying. I can't be sure that all their intentions are always good. A lot of times these intentions come from just trying to ride a trend and look a certain way rather than it coming from a real place. But whatever the intention is, it seems to be working. I'm seeing more and more companies like Netflix hiring very, very talented people of color who otherwise would have been, I believe, looked over because there is a competent white man. And so that makes me very happy to see that there's a lot of opening up that's happening. And there's a whole lot of mentorship and support that I'm seeing. I just spoke to a really
Hmm.
great producer and director today of documentary filmmakers who is all about making films about women and has mentorship programs and initiatives just for women. And these
Wow.
kinds of things are just so inspiring. So,
And those things, and it's funny you say that. Well, I want to say funny, but in a sense of like it is exciting to see that those things are actually coming to the forefront now, and that there are more people who are offering those types of things. Because like you said, some people, like you even mentioned about yourself, not speaking up when you had that voice, right?
yes.
Now that young individual who's doing this, it's gonna, spearhead somebody else to do it, and then you have more mentorship. And we already know how it goes in the game of life. Like having a really good mentor, would truly help. Do you have a mentor yourself?
Not currently, not a specific mentor, but I have tons of great people I can turn to who
Mm.
are who are inspiring and who have come a long way, or I just see as super talented. And
Okay.
uh, I'm always turning to them and having great relationship or great conversations with them. And
Mm.
I love sharing them around. There have been younger, especially women, who have come to me, and I love to connect them to these people
Mhm.
I might consider mentors, or to connect them to people who might help them out. And it feels great to pay it forward that way.
Mhm. Oh, cool. That's amazing. That is amazing. I always tell individuals who are artists at the end of the day, you're not an artist until you actually contribute back to the art. Like I feel like
I
that
love
is
that.
the ultimate thing. Because you could be like, yeah, I'm an artist, I'm a singer, I'm a producer, I'm a filmmaker, and I'm like, what did you do to contribute to the art? Is the next question. And some people, they're so self-centered within themselves that they don't even think about those things. They're like, I think about me, they're opportunists. But you're taking your leadership role and you're actually spreading it out to several different individuals, and you're connecting the dots if you can't even do it yourself. So that is amazing, right there. I When you mentioned about, you get to see these movies firsthand, I'm just thinking about it right now. You have a lot of these independent filmmakers that are dropping these videos, movies off to you guys. Is there something that you would recommend right now to like an independent filmmaker that's coming up in the game, who's trying to get, noticed, seen, get their movie out there? Is there any type of advice that you could, pass on to them?
Oh, um, yes, whatever you're making, let's say it's a film, because that's my experience, make sure you have the right intentions behind it and that you work towards those goals. Have a plan for, um, I'm going to finish this feature film in a year, and I am going to spend a certain amount on it and no more. And my goal with this film is to get as many people to see it as possible, or it's to make as much money as possible, or it's to submit it to festivals and have it win lots of awards. So to have a very specific goal is the most important thing. And as a dancer, you would probably know more about um, how it applies to other art like dance or singing. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and but I think clear goals and being very honest with yourself why you're doing this, and is it truly what makes you happy? You have to know that this is what makes you happy, because it's so hard to have a career in the arts or entertainment industry. You're not going
Mm-hmm.
to earn as much as you would if you were a lawyer or in finance. You have to come to peace with that, and you have to be realistic that you're not going to suddenly fall into millions, and that the chances of that are so low. So as long as you know that, but you still want to continue it, that's great.
And that is probably, like you mentioned, is probably one of the hardest things you have to come to the realization. Now, it obviously there are a lot of successful people within the arts and entertainment, industry that are making millions and millions of dollars. But starting off, it's not like you get a salary right at the top. You walk in, you're like, okay, I'm in the arts. I'm working check to check. I'm trying to figure it out. So it is something that's very, you know, discouraging at first, but obviously for someone that you're passing it on to the filmmaker, I think, like you mentioned, having clear goals and expectations along the journey, it's going to be a major help. I've realized that within my career as well, and I know that that is something that as an artist or someone within the entertainment industry, definitely setting those clear goals and knowing what the expectation is from getting to that goal, it truly would help. You
Yeah,
know.
absolutely. And even unfortunately, this isn't great news, but even after you've been working at it for years and maybe loving what you do, there's a good chance you still won't come into millions or make so much money, or maybe even make enough money to live off of that. That's the hard part. And that's partially why I'm in the business side of showbiz, because it's a, permanent full-time job.
That's right. Get some benefits in there. Now, could you tell? I said you get some benefits with that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I feel like a bit of a cop out, but at least I do love what I do.
Yes, yes, no, it definitely shows, and it obviously from this interview I could hear it in your voice about how and you obviously care about it as well because you're connecting dots to people. Could you tell us a little bit more about Myth Control and how that came about?
Oh, absolutely. We thought, wow, we have so much talent that we know. And it's a strange time when everyone's at home. We don't really know what to do with ourselves. Some of us who are lucky. Um, we know so many actors who are sitting at home. We have so much to say. Why don't we get a group together and do something? Whether that's a idea or treatment that we flesh out for a series or a movie, or just make it. So it was crazy, and we decided to just go for it and had a script written up with a talented group of about 25 people all over the world within a matter of weeks. And we first talked about it like at the very end of March, and by June we were in production, remote production, sending a camera around to our actors, whom we taught to use, and we did their hair and makeup remotely as well, told them how to dress their set, and they went off and shot it with us looking on from Zoom and video conferencing. So
Mm.
wild ride, but it was beautiful. And it is finally finished. And we have been actively shopping it around to streaming platforms to see how we can get it up somewhere. And we have taken the third episode out as a short and we submitting it to festivals. It's called Amy Victoria, and it's a beautiful story about two deaf women in a relationship during quarantine.
Mm. 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 And well, I know a lot of great stories. I know we lost a lot of amazing people through that time, and it's definitely been a hard, and we're still going through it, our country and around the world. But there has been amazing stories that have come from this, and right now a lot of them are coming to the light where people are kind of saying, "Well, this happened during the pandemic, and this is what I did." So I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing that short film or even those things that you guys are submitting in regards to the festivals, because I know it will inspire a lot of people because this is a history for all of us, for
It
the
is.
people who are living in, and it's I when I do have my conversations with individuals, I always say, you know, the biggest question that's going to happen or come up is, what did you do during this time? You know,
Mhm.
did you go left? Did you go right? Did you stand still? You know, were you looking for a handout? Were you creating your own opportunities? You know, what did you do? And I feel like you've actually done a lot and you're still doing a whole lot. And I know we're not even out of this pandemic, but amazing, amazing, amazing job. You know, is there anything, you know, to kind of finish off on this interview? Is there anything you want to kind of pass on to the listeners? I know the Zaka community is very happy to have you on the show and hear from you and hear about your journey and about, you know, again, your family and about where you went to school and your job, your profession. You know, is there anything you want to kind of leave the listeners off with?
I would say any advice is just work hard, work very, very hard, and but be very, very honest about how the system can be stacked up against you, and any little bit of that you can give back. Again, as Paul said, is is wonderful because it will make a difference, right? Whether that's voting, volunteering, passing on any knowledge, mentoring, these things are all wonderful. And even if you're very, very busy, those things will all help you as much as they help the other person that you're helping out.
No, thank you so much, Sana, for sharing that information and obviously sharing your story with us. Again, listeners, if you want to hear more stories like Sana, you know, check us out on ZakaConnect.com or follow our feed Zaka wherever you listen to your podcasts. Again, Sana, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. We look forward to hearing more about your story and following your journey. Again, congratulations on all your things you've been doing. And I look forward to hopefully dancing with you soon, young lady, at some point in time.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you for having me.